Hello, my friends. Welcome. My name is Joe. This is the Joe Martino Show. Today, I want to talk to you about what are some things that you could do with the short amount of time that we have remaining in the year to make this year even more successful for you, or to set yourself up for success for next year. Let's kick it off. This is the Joe Martino Show.
You're listening to the Joe Martino Show, a podcast dealing with all things emotional, relational, and human nature. Joe is a licensed counselor in the state of Michigan, specializing in relationship therapy. He is also the author of the book, The Emotionally Secure Couple. All advice offered in this episode is offered for entertainment and educational purposes only. Enjoy the show.
All right, welcome back. Hello. We are quickly approaching the end of the year. When this episode goes down, will be November 10th, roughly 7 weeks left to the year. And I'm still not sure I'm over 2020, and we're starting to have to prepare for 2022. Lots of good emails, lots of good questions. Went to lunch last week with a friend, and they said, hey, one of the things that you didn't do is you didn't point out you didn't define what is a toxic person. I got a bunch of emails about that. You know, I talked about you don't have to keep people in your life, but if you're going to keep people in your life, there's going to be conflict, and one of the ways you can decide is if they're toxic, the conflict's pointless because they're getting enjoyment out of the conflict. But I didn't go so far as to define what is toxic. And then I have a consulting client, and we've been talking about what does it mean to sit with different things that happen in life? What does it mean to just sit in discomfort, in distress with different things that happen in life? And, they were like, hey, that might make a good podcast episode. I agree. I think it will. And I want to talk about that. There's parenting things I've gotten emails about. I want to talk about those. What we're going to go into today, though, is just what are you going to do with the rest of the year? So let's just say there's 6 weeks left in the year. And if you're listening to this, and I know people listen to podcasts, at different times of life, different seasons of life, people, they'll listen for a while, leave, come back, etc. If you're listening to this and this episode is playing for you and it's the middle of February or the middle of June, it doesn't matter because the principles that we're going to talk about are the same. And those are, what do you want to do over the next 6 weeks? When 6 weeks are done, is there one thing outside of the everything else that you already do that you want to make sure gets done? In full transparency and disclosure here, I don't always do something the last 6 weeks of the year to make sure that, okay, I got to get this done. I have, just a couple years ago, right before the pandemic hit, there was something that I needed to get done by January 1. It was outside of my normal wheelhouse of activity. And so it moved to the top of the list, and I made sure that I scheduled time for it. And that's really what I want to talk about today. Then over the next 6 weeks, 2 questions. How are you going to prep yourself for 2022? If you are, if you're a longtime listener and you've been following along, I like to talk about themes and words of the year. And I like to have a theme for the year. I like to have a word of the year, something that I ruminate on for all 12 months, something that I hope will direct me. And so I start thinking about that now, right around now. I start putting in some time. I start jotting down some ideas. I start jotting down some goals for 2022. Now, these are not permanent goals. They may not even make it to the list of goals that I want to accomplish, but I do start putting them down. I've talked a lot about intentionality winning, and this is part of what I believe is intentional living. Something else I do that I haven't talked much about is I try to gather what I think my expectations for the year are. And that's really where I want to land today. I feel like I've been talking a lot to people lately about expectations and intentions, and I've done an episode on that before, maybe 2. Today, though, we're going to talk about what's the difference between desire and intentions, because desire sits somewhere between expectations and intentions. And so I'll start to what are things that I expect? For instance, 2022 will start one of my daughter's senior year. She's a junior now, so she graduates 2023. So I will start, when I start to journal about my expectations for 2022, I write out the months, January to December. And one of the expectations that somewhere, June, July, August, that will be in there is I will expect that there will be an emotional tax on me. And there are some people, whenever I say this, they're like, not me, man. When my kids are ready to go, I'm excited, blah, 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 blah. Which, great. That's good for them. I don't care. You don't have to have the same emotional response to your kids starting senior year as I do my kids starting their senior year. What we do have to have is intentional living. That's how we stay healthy. And one of the ways that we have intentional healthing, imagine if I could talk. One of the ways that we have intentional living is we ask ourselves, what are my expectations for the year? And then on another sheet of paper or another space of the same paper, I'll often write, what are my intentions? Now, here's the thing. What's the difference between desire and intentions? Desire is just a hope. And there's nothing wrong with that. We need hope. We need desire. We need to have wants. We need to foster wants and desires in our lives. Intentions is a plan for how we're going to achieve that which we desire. And so there are two things that I want you to look at. One, I want you to look at the rest of the year, roughly 7 weeks, 6 weeks. What's one thing that is outside of your daily routine of responsibilities that you would like to get done? Now, this could be one or two things. It could be an end into itself, right? So you're going to get done. You're going to get this thing done so that it's no longer on your plate. And so when 2022 starts, this thing that's been hanging out there is done, air quotes, or not air quotes. There should be real quotes around that, right? It's done. Or it's setting you up to get something else done in 2022. So I have a friend that's writing a book. And, well, he's written books and he wants to write a book in 2022. So the thing that he picked for the last 6 weeks of this year is he needs to do some work with his publisher on kind of the context of the book, the timeline and all that stuff, some author stuff. It's stuff that he has to get done in order to write the book. So he's setting himself up to do something else in 2022. But writing isn't his main income. It's something that he does on the side, and he's very good at it, but it's still something that requires him to pull things up out of the normal day-to-day responsibilities and be like, okay, this here needs to be done. Or let's say that you wanted to run a marathon next year or buy a house. What is something that you could focus on over the next 6 weeks that would be a success to help you be successful in that thing that you want to do next year? Or maybe it's something you want to close out this year. Like you've been talking about, redoing a room in your home, or you've been talking about scheduling a girls trip or a guys trip or a family trip. Whatever it is, how are you setting up your pre-work so that you can be successful in the thing that you want to do? And so you need to kind of come up with a list of what are the things that you want to do. What are some of the things that you want to see happen as a course of success for you next year? And these are very important because these are our desires. So what are your desires? And then you need to set your intentions. What are the behaviors that you're going to engage in? And this desire to behavior thing is pretty common in psychology. There's a lot of people that talk about it, so it's not new with me, but it is very important for people who successfully do the things that they want to do. They intentionally set their intentions. We're in the middle of hunting season here in Michigan. We're actually coming to the end of opening season of archery, and we're starting gun season next week. And one of the things that I enjoy about hunting is there's prep work to it. There are things that you have to do ahead of time to really experience the full benefit of hunting. So last week I went with my wife and my son, and we set up a ground blind so that I can be covered when the snow comes, not in snow. And these are prep work things that you do. A friend of mine, a lot of my friends, in fact, we heat our house with wood. There's work that you have to do to prep that. And so what we do, and when we're talking about these 6 week increments, what we do is we ask ourselves, okay, what are the things that I have to do anyhow? And we just let those go. What is something that if I were to focus on it for the next 6 years, it might improve those things that I have to do? Or it might make the next things that I need to do in the next set of 6 weeks better. Or it might make something in the future better. It will set me up better for success. I hope this is making sense. I've never taught this without a whiteboard, and so I'm not sure I'm a little nervous about doing it over this medium because I can't write on the whiteboard for you to see. And so what you do is this thing that you're going to pick is not something that you have to do anyhow. It's something that you have to do or that you could do. If you don't do it, probably things will keep running, but you might not level up, if you'll allow me the phrase. You might not increase your ability to get other things done. Or you might not have the full experience of those things that you are getting done. This is kind of like, and there are people that talk about like, hey, just start. Whatever you're doing, just start. A friend of mine's writing a book, and she started a podcast, and she's talking about the book, and I'm like, just write. Just sit down and write. And to my knowledge, that's what she does. She sits down and she writes. And so the question then becomes, if she were to do this, like, okay, what's something that I could focus on? And maybe she wants to focus on her writing. What's something that she could focus on for the next 6 weeks? So it's not a long-term commitment. It's 6 weeks. Something that I'm going to add to my free time, or I'm going to take away from my free time to focus on that will improve my writing. And now this becomes an intention, right? And the difference between desire and intention is that intentions have a plan. Desire is hope without a plan. And hope isn't a strategy. There's a book that I want to read, have not read yet, titled that, Hope is Not a Strategy. And so maybe you want to expose your kids to the theater type arts. And if you live here in Grand Rapids, we have a great theater system. Grand Rapids Broadway, Cedar Springs has a great community art center. Ionia has a wonderful theater players association. Well, so maybe you need to do some research over the next 6 weeks on what that looks like. It doesn't matter what you pick. The question becomes, what are you going to do? And sometimes you might say, you know what? My plate is full. There's nothing I can do right now. And so I'm not going to add anything. And there's plenty of 6-week runs where that's what I do. Because this isn't about creating a new daily responsibility. It's about creating something that moves up on your focus meter so that you are zeroing in on that first. So if you want to do this, what I want you to do is I just want you to think about the things that you'd like to accomplish in 2022. And then I'd like you to think about anything that you would like to have accomplished here in 2021 that maybe you haven't made progress on. And then just ask yourself, what are the behaviors that I would need to engage in order to set myself up to get that done outside of my normal responsibilities? And then pick a couple of those behaviors and do them. Put them into play, put them into action, and see how it goes. Then write me and let me know. Thanks so much for listening. I know you can do anything with your time, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this today. We'll catch you next week.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please share with a friend. And hey, give us that rating in your podcast store. Until next time, change possible.